Clint Eastwood, Hollywood's last outlaw, walks onto Jimmy Kimmel's stage to promote his new film. But what starts as a routine interview turns into a fiery clash that gets him thrown out of the studio. How did a simple talk show segment spiral into chaos? Let's get into it. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Let's see who's tuned in for this wild ride. The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio is electric. Lights glaring, crowd humming with excitement. Clint Eastwood, well into his 90s, is the night's main draw. His presence alone is enough to hush the room. He's here for his latest film, a stark drama about a rancher fighting a corporate land grab. A story that's as much about him as it is about the character. His squint, his gravelly drawl, they're still lethal. But Clint's no fan of the talk show game, the forced laughs, the polished scripts. He agreed to this for one reason: to get the word out. Anything else, and he's not playing. Backstage, trouble's already brewing. Clint's assistant, Maggie, a no-nonsense woman who's been at his side for years, senses it. She warned the producers earlier, her voice low, firm. Don't turn him into a circus act. They nodded, but their eyes betrayed them, plotting for clicks, a viral moment to milk his legend. They want him to play along, maybe toss on a prop or crack a self-deprecating joke. Maggie knows better. Clint doesn't bend, not for studios, not for anyone. The producers ignored her, and they'll pay for it. In the green room, Clint's nursing a black coffee, staring at a monitor as Jimmy Kimmel kicks off the show. Jimmy's in top form. His monologue carving up the latest celebrity meltdowns, the crowd roaring. Clint's expression doesn't shift, his fingers drumming lightly on the chair. Maggie clocks it, that subtle sign he's sizing up the situation like a gunfighter before a draw. They're going to try something, she mutters to a stagehand who shrugs. Oblivious, the stage manager signals it's time, and Clint rises, straightens his jacket, and heads for the curtain. Alone, no fuss. The stage is a different beast. Jimmy's rapping a bit about some singer's public tantrum, the audience laughing on cue. He shifts gears, hyping Clint's entrance. The man, the myth Clint Eastwood. The band lays down a gritty riff. The crowd erupts, and Clint steps out. His walk slow, deliberate, like he's staking claim to the room. He shakes Jimmy's hand, a brief iron grip, and sits, his frame taut, eyes scanning the set. The cheers fade, and the air tightens. Just the two of them now. The crowd a distant hum. Jimmy plays it safe at first, asking about the film. Its roots in loyalty, standing your ground. Clint leans in, his voice rough but steady, talking about the rancher, the land, the fight against greed. Every word lands like a hammer, the audience, locked in, feeling the weight of his conviction. But Jimmy's got a show to run, and he's chasing something lighter, something that'll trend. He tosses out a quip about Clint's cowboy days, asking if he still rides horses. Clint's answer is short, clipped. When it matters, the crowd chuckles, but there's an edge in his tone, a warning Jimmy doesn't catch. Sensing the moment slipping, Jimmy tries to pivot, pulling a story from Clint's past, something about a bar fight on the set of an old western. He's fishing for a laugh, a nostalgic anecdote. Clint's eyes narrow, his jaw tight. Didn't happen, he says, his voice cutting through the studio hum. The crowd stirs, a mix of gasps and uneasy laughs. Jimmy grins, thinking he can smooth it over, but he's misread the room. And Clint? He doubles down when Jimmy reaches for a prop, a tacky cowboy hat, holding it up like it's a gag. Come on, Clint, one quick shot for the fans, he says, waving it. The audience claps, egging it on, but Clint doesn't move. His stare could burn holes. Put that away, he says, not loud, but every syllable carries. The studio goes quiet, Jimmy's smile cracking. Maggie, watching from the wings, shakes her head. This is about to get ugly. The silence in the studio is deafening, a heavy pause that feels like the moment before a storm breaks. Jimmy Kimmel, still holding the cowboy hat, tries to laugh it off, his chuckle thin, forced. All right, no hats tonight, he says, tossing it onto the desk. But the crowd's uneasy, their earlier cheers now a faint murmur. Clint Eastwood hasn't moved, his eyes locked on Jimmy, unblinking, like he's staring down a rattlesnake. The tension's palpable, the kind that makes your skin prickle. Backstage, Maggie's hands are clenched, her whisper to the stage manager sharp, "Told you not to push him." The stage manager, sweating, signals the control booth to cut to commercial. But the director's not ready to bail yet. They want the drama, and they're getting it. Jimmy, sensing he's losing control, shifts in his chair, trying to pivot back to the interview. "So, let's talk more about the film," he says, his voice a touch too bright, like he's trying to reset the room. He asks about the inspiration behind the rancher's story, hoping to steer things back to safe ground. Clint leans forward, his hands resting on his knees, and starts talking. But it's not the answer Jimmy expects. "It's about people who don't roll over," Clint says, his voice low, deliberate, "folks who fight when the world tries to take what's theirs. Not about playing dress-up for laughs." The jab lands hard, and the audience catches it. A few gasps mixing with scattered claps. Jimmy's smile tightens, his fingers tapping the desk. The host tries to keep things moving, asking about the film's production, but Clint's not done. He cuts in, unprompted, his tone sharper now. "You know, I came here to talk about something real," he says, his eyes sweeping the set, the lights, the crowd. "Not to be some sideshow for your ratings." The crowd stirs, some cheering, others whispering, unsure whether this is part of the act. Jimmy's caught off guard, his usual quick wit failing him. He glances at the floor producer, who's signaling to wrap it up, but Clint's on a roll, and he's not stopping. "I've been in this game longer than you've been alive," he tells Jimmy, his voice steady but edged with fire. "I don't need to play your games to sell a story." The audience is split now, some shouting support for Clint, others heckling, thinking it's all for show. Jimmy, trying to regain the upper hand, leans in with a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. "Hey, we're just having fun here, Clint. No need to get heated," he says. But the words sound hollow. He tries a new angle, asking about Clint's directing style, hoping to flatter him into calming down. But Clint's not biting. "Fun," he says, his voice dripping with disdain. "You call this fun? Parading people out here to make 'em look foolish?" He gestures at the set, the bright lights, the whole machine. The crowd's buzzing again, louder, feeding off the raw energy. Backstage, the producers are panicking. The director's in the booth barking orders to prep a commercial break, but the ratings are spiking and someone higher up wants to let it play out. Maggie's pacing, muttering about how she knew this would happen. She catches a glimpse of Clint on the monitor, his face like granite, and knows he's not backing down. On stage, Jimmy's scrambling, his jokes falling flat. He tries to pivot to a lighter topic, asking Clint about his favorite role from the old days, but Clint cuts him off again. "You don't get it," he says, his voice rising just enough to carry. "This isn't about me. It's about respect for the work, for the people watching." The crowd roars, some standing, clapping, others booing, the room a powder keg. Jimmy's had enough. He leans forward, his tone sharper now, dropping the nice guy act. "Look, Clint, we're just trying to give the fans what they want," he says, gesturing to the audience. "They love you, they want to see the legend." It's a misstep. Clint's eyes flash and he leans in, his voice low but cutting. "They don't want a clown, they want the truth." The words hang in the air, and for a split second, it's like the whole studio holds its breath. Then a heckler yells something from the back, too garbled to make out, but it's enough to break the spell. Jimmy seizes the chance, standing up, clapping his hands. "All right, we'll take a quick break, folks," he says, forcing a laugh. The band kicks in, but Clint's not moving, his stare fixed on Jimmy, and the crowd's on edge, sensing this isn't over. The band's playing loud and brassy, trying to drown out the chaos, but it's not working. The Jimmy Kimmel live studio is a live wire. The crowd buzzing, some cheering Clint Eastwood's name, others shouting for Jimmy to fight back. Jimmy's standing, forcing a smile, clapping like everything's fine. But his eyes dart to the floor producer, who's frantically signaling to cut to commercial. The cameras are still rolling, though, catching every second of this train wreck. Clint hasn't budged from his chair, his stare locked on Jimmy, a silent challenge that's louder than the music. Backstage, Maggie's muttering curses, watching the monitor, knowing Clint's not done. The director in the booth is torn. Ratings are through the roof, but this is spinning out of control. As the band winds down, Jimmy sits again, leaning toward Clint, his voice low, off mic, but the audience is close enough to catch fragments. Let's just cool it. All right? We'll talk about the movie, he says, trying to salvage the segment. Clint doesn't blink. You had your chance, he says, his voice like a blade, just loud enough for the front row to hear. The crowd stirs, phones out, recording the moment, already spreading online. Jimmy's jaw tightens. He's not used to being challenged like this, not on his own turf. He glances at the audience, trying to gauge their mood, and decides to play to them. Folks, we love Clint, right? He says, raising his hands, egging on applause. Some clap, but it's scattered, the room too divided to rally. Clint leans back, crossing his arms, his face unreadable. He's not here to win the crowd, he's here to make a point. The stage manager, hovering near the wings, signals Jimmy to wrap it. But Jimmy's not ready to let it go. He tries one last time to steer things back, picking up a cue card, asking about the film's cast, praising Clint's directing. But Clint had enough of the script. You're not listening, he says, cutting Jimmy off mid-sentence. His voice isn't loud, but it carries, silencing the murmurs. This isn't about the movie anymore. It's about you thinking you can turn me into a prop for your show. The crowd gasps. A few shout, "Tell him, Clint," while others boo, the divide growing sharper. Jimmy's smile is gone now, his face flushed. He's been in tight spots before, but this is different. This is Clint Eastwood calling him out in front of millions. He tries to laugh, but it comes out strained. Come on, man, it's just TV, he says, spreading his hands, appealing to the audience. We're all here to have a good time. Clint shakes his head, slow, deliberate. Not me, he says. I came to talk about something that matters. You turned it into a circus. The words hit like a punch, and the crowd erupts, half cheering, half jeering, the noise swallowing the set. Maggie in the wings nods to herself, a grim satisfaction on her face. She's seen Clint take down bigger egos than this. The director finally calls it, the commercial break kicking in, the monitors flashing ads. The band stops, and the house lights dim slightly, signaling a pause. But Clint's still in his chair, unmoving, like a statue carved from defiance. Jimmy stands, whispering something to the floor producer, his gestures sharp, frustrated. The audience is restless, some chanting Clint's name, others arguing among themselves, security's edging closer to the stage, two burly guys in black, their eyes on Clint, but they're hesitant. They know who he is. Maggie steps forward, catching the stage manager's arm. Don't even think about touching him, she snaps, her voice low but fierce. The stage manager nods, backing off, but the tension's only climbing. During the break, the producers huddle, voices raised, trying to figure out how to save the show. Jimmy's pacing near the desk, running a hand through his hair, muttering to himself. He knows he's losing, but he's not sure how to turn it around. Clint, meanwhile, sits calmly, sipping water a stagehand brought, his eyes scanning the crowd, reading the room. A few fans in the front row lean forward, trying to catch his attention. One yelling, "You're the man, Clint!" He gives a slight nod, nothing more. The break's almost over, and the director's made a call. Let Clint stay, but Jimmy needs to take control. The cameras start rolling again. The band cues up, and Jimmy forces himself back to the desk, his face a mask of professionalism. But Clint's ready for round two, and he's not here to make nice. The studio lights snap back to full blaze. The band's final notes fading as the Jimmy Kimmel Live audience settles. There murmurs a low hum of anticipation. The cameras are rolling again, and Jimmy Kimmel slides into his chair. His smile practiced but strained, like a man stepping back into a boxing ring after a rough round. Clint Eastwood hasn't moved, his posture unchanged, eyes fixed somewhere past Jimmy, as if the host is just a distraction. The crowd's energy is jagged, split between those chanting for Clint and others waiting for Jimmy to land a comeback. Backstage, Maggie's watching, arms crossed, her expression a mix of pride and worry. The producers are on edge, the director's voice crackling through headsets. "Keep it tight, Jimmy. Don't let him run the show." Jimmy leans forward, clapping once to refocus the room. "We're back with the one and only Clint Eastwood," he says, his tone lighter than before, trying to reset the vibe. He dives into a question about the film's cinematography, hoping to ground things in Clint's expertise. But Clint's not here for softballs. He answers, his voice steady, talking about the stark visuals, the way the land itself is a character. Then, unprompted, he shifts gears. "You know what's wrong with places like this," he says, gesturing at the set. "You think it's all about flash, about making noise. You forget what's real." The crowd stirs, some clapping, others shifting uncomfortably. Jimmy's eyes flicker with irritation, but he keeps his cool, nodding like he's in on the point. "Fair enough," Jimmy says, leaning back, trying to play the gracious host. "But this is entertainment, right? People want a show." He gestures to the audience, fishing for support, and gets a mix of cheers and boos. Clint doesn't flinch. "They want honesty," he says, his voice cutting through the noise. "Not some polished lie you feed 'em to keep 'em clapping." The words land like a slap, and the crowd's reaction is instant. A roar of approval from some, jeers from others. Jimmy's smile falters, his fingers gripping the desk. He's losing the room, and he knows it. The floor producer signals to pivot, but Jimmy's pride is in the mix now, and he's not backing down. He tries a different tack, leaning in, his tone sharper. "Look, Clint, you're a legend. Nobody's arguing that. But you're on my stage, and we've got a show to do." It's a challenge, direct, and the audience feels it, their noise spiking. Clint's eyes narrow just a fraction, but it's enough to make the air feel heavier. "Your stage," he says, his voice low, deliberate. "I'm here because I chose to be, not to dance for you." The crowd explodes, some standing, shouting Clint's name, others yelling for Jimmy to push back. Maggie, in the wings, shakes her head, muttering, "Here we go." The security guys edge closer, their hands twitching, but they're still holding back, wary of the optics. Jimmy's had enough. He stands, breaking the host's cardinal rule of staying seated, and points at Clint. "You want to talk respect? How about respecting the people who invited you here?" His voice is loud now, the nice guy mask gone. The crowd's on its feet, the noise deafening, a mix of cheers and boos swallowing the set. Clint finally stands, slow, deliberate, his height and presence filling the stage. He doesn't raise his voice, but every word carries. "Respect's earned," he says, stepping closer to Jimmy. "Not bought with lights and applause." The audience loses it. The studio shaking with their reaction, the director screaming in the booth to cut, but the cameras keep rolling, capturing the moment Jimmy's show becomes Clint's battleground. The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio is a cauldron of noise, the crowd's cheers and boos crashing like waves as Clint Eastwood and Jimmy Kimmel stand face to face, inches apart, the air between them crackling. Clint's words, "Respect's earned, not bought with lights and applause," still hang heavy, the audience feeding off their raw defiance. Jimmy's face is flushed, his fists clenched, caught between rage and the need to save his show. The cameras, against the director's frantic orders, keep rolling, broadcasting every second to a stunned audience at home. Backstage, Maggie's eyes are locked on Clint, her expression fierce, ready to step in if things go further south. The two security guards, now at the stage's edge, exchange glances, unsure how to handle a legend like Eastwood. Jimmy breaks the standoff first, stepping back, forcing a laugh that sounds more like a cough. "All right, Clint, you've made your point," he says, his voice tight, trying to reclaim control. He gestures to the crowd, hoping to rally them. Let's give it up for Clint Eastwood, folks. Some clap, but the applause is drowned by shouts. The room too charged to settle. Clint doesn't acknowledge it, his stare still fixed on Jimmy like he's weighing whether to say more. The floor producer, sweating, signals security to move in, whispering, "Get him off now." The guards hesitate, but one steps forward, raising a hand toward Clint. "Sir, let's take a walk," he says, his tone cautious, respectful. Clint turns, his eyes locking onto the guard, and for a moment it's like the set freezes, the crowd holding its breath. "Don't," Clint says, his voice low, not a threat, but a command. The guard stops, hands up, backing off. Maggie pushes through the wings, her voice cutting through the din. "He's leaving when he's ready," she snaps, glaring at the producer. But Clint raises a hand, silencing her. He looks at Jimmy, then the audience, his expression unreadable. "I said what I came to say," he tells the room, his voice steady, final. Then, without another word, he turns and walks off stage, his stride slow, deliberate, the crowd erupting in a mix of cheers and stunned murmurs. Jimmy's left standing alone, the band scrambling to play something, anything, to fill the void. He forces a smile, waving to the crowd. "Well, that was something, huh?" he says, his voice shaky, trying to spin it into a joke. The audience laughs, but it's uneven, the energy fractured. Backstage, the producers are in chaos, the director yelling about damage control, while Maggie follows Clint to the green room, where he grabs his coat, calm as ever. "Told him not to push you?" she mutters. Clint just nods, his eyes distant, already past it. Outside, the internet's exploding. Clips of the clash going viral, fans and critics picking sides. The show limps to its end, Jimmy rushing through the next segment, his usual charm off-kilter. The story of Clint's exit overshadows everything, a moment that'll be dissected for years. The night a legend walked onto a talk show and refused to play the game. As Clint steps into the night, the studio behind him buzzing with fallout, it's clear. He didn't just leave. He drew a line, one that Hollywood won't soon forget. That's the story, folks. What a wild ride. If you loved this deep dive, hit that subscribe button to catch more stories like this. We're building a community that loves the real stuff. Drop a comment below, let me know where you're watching from. Maybe Los Angeles, Tokyo, or somewhere off the grid. Tell me what you think. Was Clint right to stand his ground, or did he go too far? Like the video, share it with your friends, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious, stay real, and I'm out.